Detroit Lions went back-to-back Georgia players in the 7th round of the 2025 NFL Draft, and today we're here with our first look at both of these additions, so let's get right into it. So yes, today is kind of picking up on where we left off yesterday. Yesterday, I uploaded a couple of clips of the players that the Detroit Lions selected, my initial reactions to both of those selections, but the two videos that I left out were the two 7th round picks out of Georgia, which today I wanted to do like a quick breakdown version of just my early initial thoughts of these two draft picks, what I had seen so far of these two players with my notes in front of me. But of course, this is not the full deep dive breakdown. Those will happen throughout the offseason, as we typically do, where we go through essentially every game the guys played, at least through the past year and even further for those guys. Little overview of these two draft picks, and I got to tell you, I'm excited to do the breakdown of both of these players. These are two guys that the more you watch of, I think the more you get excited. There's an early flash that you get with Dominic Lovett out of Georgia, and with Dan Jackson, it's the more you watch, the more you're excited. The production, it was fantastic. I knew that was already an aspect of his game, but the more you watch him, the more you see why the Lions would be interested in this piece to add some safety depth, which we actually absolutely need. So let's start there first with Dan Jackson, who was the Detroit Lions' first pick in the 7th round, 6', 194. Now, this is a player I already had experience watching with Dan Jackson, and his ability to be so productive in the back end and the scheme versatility is immediately what popped when I saw the name. I thought this makes sense. The speed is there. The range is there. This makes sense for what the Lions do stylistically. You have to have versatility, and the amount of production that he would constantly rack up in terms of just getting his hands on the ball carrier, all of that made a ton of sense when I first saw the name. But then when you kind of revisit what you're getting here with Dan Jackson, you start to see the football intelligence, you see the feel, you see the angles, you get excited about potential special teams upside, understanding that there's areas of development needed, but also this doesn't have to be the most spectacular athlete to work at safety. It's one of those positions where it's about the play speed that you bring. Even with that being said, though, an unofficial 4.46 40 time is something that I can buy into. So we'll start there first with that 3-level ability, the ability to play at all different spots. And what I like about this is a tough attacking safety. While there's inconsistencies as a tackler and he will miss too many tackles, mainly because to me he comes in a little bit upright as a run defender, doesn't break down and sink incredibly well. He also doesn't carry a lot of force through his tackles consistently outside of just throwing his body. His feet don't run through tackles, so you get some misses. You allow leakage constantly against bigger targets, but you get tons of toughness. So when you think about that ability to step into the box, not only be willing to stick his nose in and hit guys, but have a really nice scrape feel, have a good posture in the tackling, but also specifically that ability to contain, set run gaps, get himself in the right position to squeeze things back inside, just do his job. One of the most special traits I think we're going to see here with Dan Jackson, and we'll see how this carries over the more I watch, is the ability to take angles downhill. I think this could be a special trait within his game. It could be an elite aspect in his game, not as a run defender, just as a whole, but just as a whole in his game. Coverage and run defense are the elite angles that he takes to the football. He plays the alley incredibly well. He's very adaptable. You'll see this in coverage when he's bailing as well, the way that he's adaptable to kind of stay over top. He just plays really good with angles, and that really helps his play speed specifically. What I also like about this 3-level ability as well is you see an assignment sound awareness. You'll see him kind of sort through traffic, sort through stacks. You just get a good feel with what you're getting here from the player, and then you'll also see like how he attacks and approaches the quarterback, which also improves his play speed from a deeper alignment, where how quickly he recognizes the quarterback drop, the offensive line run blocking, and how quickly he is to trigger off of that, right, and kind of settle himself down. Then he has the feel when you talk about coverage, where it's like, okay, the quarterback cut this part of the field off because he moved here. All of a sudden, now I can be a little bit more aggressive, and I can crank up the aggression to squeeze here rather than having to play in between two guys, say in zone coverage, for example. So from the feel of being able to play all over the place, that's there. Now, in terms of coverage versatility, you put him over the slot, I think you're going to have some issues due to some of the agility and bend at the top of the route, which feels a little bit more tight and stiff. But what you do get is you get a recovery athlete that can definitely run. He takes undercutting angles when he gets himself in trail positions. Think about Brian Branch. Brian Branch runs like a 4.57, but he can work with slots. Specifically, we can see it one-on-one, but he also, when he has some of the bend and the looseness and the agility, all those things, but he also plays with really good angles when he gets himself behind. So while I don't think Dan Jackson's anywhere near that Brian Branch level of like, oh, put him one-on-one, you do get the feel when he's working underneath routes to position himself really well, and that takes me into the play speed aspect of his game, adds to this. Now, I don't think he plays with great burst. There's not a lot of explosion when you watch him. The plant and drive burst doesn't really pop, kind of settling himself downhill. He does play with some balance, so it's a pretty quick movement, but you also see this laterally as well. Kind of those hip transitions don't feel incredibly explosive. Well, I actually noted in zone coverage is I felt that he had an overlapping feel where it's like, okay, this isn't here. He's sorting through routes. He's working the quarterback's eyes heavily. but the athleticism didn't pop as much to not only just sort routes, but then also go make the play. He'd kind of overlap coverage, but he wasn't always in the spot to actually make the play, which had him forced to play very proactive, which he also did, right? His angles vertically to protect over top. You don't see guys running by him very often because he takes angles that are going to work for him. Now, that can limit playmaking, but it does do a nice job of setting himself up to give himself a chance. And then that long speed in a straight line is discipline. The trail speed, he works himself back into routes. At the catch point, he shows some explosiveness. He shows some length, even though he has sub 30-inch arms, which can limit that as well. But again, to me, that's back to positioning, okay? The agility is a little bit of a knock here too, but it's back to positioning, and he's tough. He's going to make you work for finishing as a pass catcher. The angles that he plays with specifically, it's the recovery speed, it's the balance at the top of the route. He really controls himself within his footwork to be able to open hips, turn, dive, kind of move like that. Set his hips really early. You'll see this. He'll set his hips really quickly to get himself in a position where he can speed up that process for him. So he helps himself, I think, a lot from what I've seen. Problem is he will give a little bit of space, which comes back to some of those athletic traits. You put him on receivers, you're probably going to see that a little more often as well. But then in zone coverage is where you really like him because of the eye balance, because of the way that he kind of floats through coverage, because of the way that he can play a robber role in a cover one. You could put in a cover three, you can sit into the sky, you could work into the flats, could work into the box, into a curl zone. You can also play single high. You get a lot of fluidity with where he's at because of those proactive angles that he takes and how fast he reacts to the entire play. He sees the full picture. Okay, here's a flea flicker, here's a bootleg that way, and he kind of rolls and overlaps coverage with the feel to get back into the play. Now, he's aggressive, so it can get him to jump and take some steps upfield, which could get him into trouble, but he usually recovers with pretty accurate angles. Has a little bit of a feel for route concepts. I think this is kind of noticeable as well, where he'll feel a dagger, set himself down. You'll see a screen awareness, or okay, here's the bubble, let me step down on that. It could be just a touch late, do some of the quickness there for me, some of the looseness. He's a little bit tight. Overall, though, the feel is what stands out when you watch him. And then ultimately, like I said, as a tackler, you're going to get all the toughness that you want. You're just going to get some inconsistency with his technique, the finishing, the stopping power. But he fights blockers. He positions himself. He does his job to help everybody else out. So Dan Jackson, not only does I think their special teams upside because of his toughness and the play speed that he plays with, how fast he plays the game, and how good his angles are. Like, if you get him downhill on a kickoff team, I'm going to be so confident he's going to get hands on ball carriers a lot. The problem is going to be just dialing in that technique, be more consistent, and create a lot more power that we're not giving up so much leakage and just missing tackles in general. And then that moves you over to the receiver, Dominic Lovett, who's at 5'10", 185, which is, man, this guy is so fun to watch. When he pops, it stands out. And right now you saw kind of a limited tree, like working level 1 routes, but the level 2, level 3 separation was noticeable. And you just see the consistency, the tempo, the pace that he plays, which was so noticeable. And then, of course, the special teams value, which pops again because of the play speed, which can allow him to work on, hey, coverage units, kickoff team, punt team. You get him on those spots. And both these guys, I think, have to have that in their background to at least be able to translate there, the toughness, the speed. That way they can make the roster because that's where it's going to start. We know he tested really well around the 4.4 flat, the 1.5, 3.10. Again, the explosion is a little bit on the lower side from that. I think it pops in his routes a little bit as well, but he plays with a consistent speed. He's got some slither. He's kind of tough to match up with a little bit. Now, in terms of hands from what I saw early, and this is one of those categories you got to watch a lot. Unless you're just looking at numbers, you got to watch a lot to get a sense of a guy's hands. It felt early. The body catching technique was pretty consistent. He'd run through the football. He'd keep his feet on the ground. So I did like some of the confidence there, and I felt that. He also has better length than you would expect. Almost 32-inch arms for a guy his height is kind of crazy. So it gives him more radius, but the technique outside of his body felt messy. Positioning, tracking, that felt pretty messy, like how he's going to set himself up to actually make those plays that were away from him, which felt like it limited his range way more than his length actually felt that it was capable of. And you'll kind of see that in traffic a little bit. So things away from his body just felt inconsistent. You had some focus drops where it felt like he was kind of just looking at the defender and not really the ball anymore. He was just kind of focused on like knocking the ball away. In terms of separation, this is where you get excited because there is a burst to his game. There's a second gear that he showcases that he can tap into. I don't think he always shows maybe the best bend, but there's slither in the upper body. He can become kind of slippery, work himself upfield. It also shows up off the release as well. To me, he's got that juice. You'll see it through level 3 cuts where it's not, hey, you got to get flat, break it in breaker, but hey, deep post, right, post corner, that kind of thing. It's a lot of juice. He carries a lot of speed through his routes, which is one of the toughest things for receivers, to be able to get out of breaks and boom, you're out of there. That's something that he brings. He's got to get that slingshot ability to his game where he accelerates through those spots, right? And his footwork's super efficient. There's not a lot of false movement through the top of the route. Now, sometimes I think it lacks some creativity, which can allow it to be more predictable, but it's very efficient, right? Very efficient footwork, bam, stick, I'm out, and I'm out. And it plays really well into the way that he can attack leverage, really get upfield with less of the, more kind of complex route specifically, which you'll see at times kind of get cut off a little bit at the top of the route due to some of the lack of creativity. I feel that sometimes as well, and some of the lack of shake there, and maybe even some of the explosion and bend through those routes to really sink through. Positive is, though, he brings some savviness. The head fakes, the head usage at the top of the route was super consistent. I thought there was also a disciplined nature to the way that he ran his routes, right? You talk talk about the tempo, the play speed being very consistent throughout the route, but I think that also shows up just in the way that he runs routes within his discipline. I think that's super noticeable when you watch him, because you watch him in his vertical push, you watch the way that he attacks angles. He doesn't really cut things short. Everything feels like it's very well drawn out. It's very decisive in how he's going to set up routes, and he attaches that little head fake, little head nod to everything, which could be very impactful to add some creativity. There's more explosiveness. You want to see more diversity underneath, right, outside of just catching bubbles, and a lot of over routes and vertical pushing routes. But you do see a lot of the traits that get you really excited as just the ability to separate. I think that's going to be a higher grade for me when this all gets said and done. And in terms of with the ball, while, again, not a ton of shake you feel like he plays with here, you do see kind of a suddenness to it and an early feel. That's what I like. There's an early vision to it. There's an early feel of like, okay, here's the run lane. Let me get there with the football. It's a pretty quick transition time. It's not outstanding, but it's pretty quick. But he can really get going and get up to speed quickly, which also shows up for separation. Like out of those, hey, he's in a hesitation release. And then when he sticks and goes, he's out of it. There's a slingshot to that. He also has that as a runner with the ball in his hands, where it's very quick to get upfield once he taps into it. And then again, really quick recognition of, okay, here's the spot that I got to get to. Here's the angle that's allowing me to attack. So it creates some work after the catch, kind of more being like what felt like a one-cut runner, which again, on kickoff team and things like that, if he's a kickoff returner, that's very beneficial, right? Decrease and go. And that's kind of what it feels like he has a little bit here. You can also see that as a punt returner as well. Like let the block set up and go. And he seemed to have a little vision for that. I'll have to see more, but that's what it seemed like. Now, in terms of the release, I thought that he did a nice job of awareness. Like he was pretty aware of, okay, how can I attack this? Hand usage, contact felt like it slowed him up way too much. He'd kind of try to dip out of it, but there wasn't enough there. He'd kind of get banged around a little bit. You would see it visibly affect the way that he would run routes. And even on a route like this, like you'll see some of the efficiency here. Watch this footwork. When he comes to the top of the route, he doesn't go to a two-footed step. He actually gets to the single step. So that allows him to open up some looseness, open up his hips. That way he can step over quickly. And it's so efficient. And it creates immediate separation. And the pacing is there. It doesn't stop, start. It continues. And then you'd see him get latched on a little bit too often, and the guys would kind of stick in his hip. But you also would see it a feel. You'd see that juice out of his release as well. He's giving Texas slot corners massive trouble. That would give him room off the ball and let him attack upfield, let him attack that early leverage. He was giving them big time problems. And then again, he kind of just glides off the ball as well. In terms of the route running, knocks here because I think he can break a little bit wide. Again, some of the bend at the top of the route for me, the in and out can be a little bit less crisp as a route runner specifically, but I love the way that he attacks leverage, how he out leverages the stem. He tries to kind of attempt to pry things open. You get, again, some of that savviness there as well. The double move pacing didn't feel as crisp either. Felt a little bit more kind of one speed, where it's kind of just like swiveling through routes. Even though he has a second gear, it didn't feel like he always tapped into that or really sold it as well as he could have potentially done. And again, some of the lack of shake doesn't allow him to always separate as well as you would think. There's efficiency to it, but there's not a ton of shake within his body. Everything kind of just feels like it kind of flows together a little bit at times. But I love the discipline within his push and the play speed and tempo that he works with. And then finally, to kind of lock it all up, it's the blocking, right? We talk about the special teams upside. He'll also block too. And the big thing here is, there's a toughness to it, but there's a position. There's a smart entry, right? There's an angle to kind of clear out and create openings for others. And that's noticeable, right? You see it within his engagement. You'll see a pretty strong latch, and you'll see it within the positioning. So for me, both of these guys feel like they bring special teams upside, but both of these players, one, Lovett feels like there's a lot you could tap into there in time. And hopefully in the meantime, as that gunner, as a coverage specialist, maybe even as a returner, that's where he sticks on the roster and he gets to nod over someone that even Brad, I think, kind of alluded to it. Hey, Ronnie Bell could be the better route runner, but who brings more value on special teams? Bell had a returning background, but he hasn't really done it in the NFL. If this man brought more on special teams, he could get the nod over a player just like that, right? Antoine Green, what was his role on special teams, right? Tom Kennedy never really had a role on special teams. So if you have a guy that can just out leverage those guys, even if they're better route runners now, that gets him on the field. And of course, you wrap that up with Dan Jackson, who feels like a special teams right now. You needed young depth, and the versatility fits how the Lions want to play. So I'm going to leave it there. Appreciate y'all joining, man. Let me know your thoughts. We'll do deeper dive breakdowns. And also, to wrap this up, UDFA tracker, of course, they're out there. We've got some UDFA signings. Caden is the big one that stands out to me. I had watched him a little bit out of Ole Miss, but we're going to do breakdowns on those guys a little bit later. But for now, I want to get these 7th round picks in, and I'm out.